dismissed or ignored. One private detective has followed it up, and what he has discovered puts the crime in a completely new light. Dallas, Texas. Over the last 40 years, Private Eye Bill Deere has solved a number of major cases and has a reputation for taking nothing for granted. Right from the start, he had major reservations about the police handling of the case, and so began his own investigation.
They saw the bloody glove behind the bungalow at OJ's, and they put two and two together. And with a little bit of blood found in the Bronco and a little bit of blood that was found on the driveway, I think they made up their mind very quickly that it was OJ. And from that point on, they went no further. They had their man. I felt that in my mind, maybe, just maybe, there's something wrong here. Maybe we're not being told the story.
Bill talked the case over with colleague Chris Stewart.
I can't believe that a guilty man is going to voluntarily go down in the police car, followed by Harold Weitzman, his lawyer, and say to the lawyer, "Lawyer, I don't need you. Just go ahead and sit outside. Go have a cup of coffee. I'll talk to him if I just killed two people." Why would somebody like OJ allow himself to be cross-examined, asked questions, photographed, fingerprinted, everything that they did to him if he was guilty? The case is too comfortable. That's the problem I've got with it. It's too pat. And I told Chris, I said, you know, I've got to know the truth.
Bill Deere then went out to Los Angeles to examine the crime scene for himself.
This is where her black Jeep was found.
The back gate's been changed, the number's been changed, but other than that, this is the way it was when I arrived about 3 weeks after the murders.
And that night I came back, posted Chris across the street in the car to watch out and watch for my back, and hiked myself up over the fence. I came down the steps, walked the narrow passageway, up steps, down steps, and there I'm standing there by her door. And I'm looking now, and I still see some blood there. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at what I've been told by the press, that he was hiding behind the bushes, and I'm saying, he can't be hiding behind the bushes. There's a brick wall there, separating one neighbor to the other.
There had to be a lot of commotion and a lot of screaming because these people were fighting for their life. Ron Goldman was a young man fighting for his life. Nicole was young, didn't want to die. Upstairs, you had two minor children. I think that's one of the things that really bothered me all along. I'm a father. I'm a single parent. I could no more picture myself coming here, killing either my ex-wife or whatever, and leaving my two minor children to walk out and see the mother, Nicole, lying there with her head nearly decapitated, and Ron Goldman laying against the fence, bleeding all over the place with his eyes wide open. Nobody, as a parent, could do that.
Another thing that was funny, and the people that we talked to, they all said to me, "Did you know that OJ, it bothers him, the sight of blood?" A weapon such as a knife is a weapon of choice. OJ could have done anything other than used a knife if he was afraid of blood. If you're going to use a knife, you're going to be cutting somebody, you're certainly going to see blood. They arrested OJ right after he came back from the trip. To me, when they examined him, there should have been some bruises on him that were indicative of a fight.
To Bill Deere, it was impossible for the killer to have come out of such a fight with nothing but a cut on his hand. And what's more, Ron Goldman was no average opponent. He was trained in karate.
I think that's the one thing that really caught me off guard. How do you fight with Ron Goldman, a karate expert to some degree, who's got 20-some-odd stab wounds, who's fighting for his life? He's got bruised knuckles. There's marks on the bottom of Goldman's tennis shoes. There's a mark across the canvas top of it where he's trying to kick out, trying to defend himself in the karate motions in the defensive posture that he's been taught.
Charles, you've had a chance to look at the crime scene pictures as much as we could really give you.
Medic and trained karate expert Charles England has studied the Goldman fight. Bill wants Charles to show him how he thinks the fight occurred.
Come on in, Jason. I'm going to demonstrate what's happening in the fight scene. Ron Goldman comes by here, He's surprised by a strike. He's blocking. He's coming in. The assailant's right here. He's defending himself. He's striking. The assailant's coming down, trying to overbear on him. He's coming in. I'm stabbing. He leans back to the side kick. Boom. He gets struck. He comes back in. 1, 2. He's struck in. And 3.
Would there be any wounds or any marks on your body based on what Goldman has just done to defend himself and protect his life? If there were bruised marks on the knuckles, what would that be indicative of to you as a professional?
He struck him. He struck him
where?
multiple times.
Stick your hands up to strike him.
I would say there would be strike wounds in here and to the facial area. Reading the autopsy report, he had bruises around these 2 knuckles and somewhat the third, meaning he sunk his fist into the man.
Could I have done this fight without any bruises whatsoever on my body? What would be the least I could walk away from?
The least you could walk away from would maybe be a black eye, some bruised ribs, maybe even broken ribs.
But when Simpson was examined shortly after the murders, no injuries or bruises were found, except for 3 small cuts on his left hand. Simpson has given various answers about the cuts, from a broken glass in his hotel room in Chicago to wrestling with his son. Forensic pathologist Dr. Werner Spitz viewed the photographs and testified in court against Simpson.
These were not glass cuts. And what they were fingernail marks. How did they happen? He held her with his arm around her neck, she with her long acrylic fingernails tried to get his arm off, inflicting those wounds, which by location on the fingers corresponded to that kind of a grasp.
But even if they were fingernail marks, Goldman or Nicole couldn't have caused them. Goldman's nails were too short. And though analysis of Nicole's acrylic nails did show blood, it wasn't Simpson's. It pointed to someone else with a different blood group type B. So Simpson wasn't bruised as expected, and the fingernail evidence pointed away from him. There were more contradictions too. The police and the prosecution were adamant that Simpson had carried out the murder in a spontaneous fit of jealous rage. And yet they also believed that Simpson wore the gloves that had been found, suggesting a premeditated attack. But even this wasn't the most disturbing aspect of the police case. There were serious questions about the reliability of the evidence against Simpson at the crime scenes. One of the world's most respected forensic analysts is Dr. Henry Lee. Acting for the defense, he examined the scenes at first hand.
There are certain principles, crime scene principle, basic procedure violated. Everybody together step over the place and step into the blood. That's why the problem starts the contamination of the scene. The crucial issue in the case is walk all over the blood. Now you regenerate, redistribute all this pattern so the DNA grouping could be erroneous. Shoe print pattern in that little area becomes so complicated. So many different patterns there, you really cannot tell which one from who now.
Peter Harper is a British specialist in this field and has reviewed the police handling of the scenes. He's astonished by the disregard of basic procedure.
There's about 7 to 9 officers milling up and down that path, and it still hasn't been forensically examined or cleared. I mean, it's atrocious, that. It should never, ever been allowed to happen. Now, there's the view here of the coroner's officer. He's now at the top of the steps, so he's walked through the blood, over the body. He's standing on the top step of the passageway, which again could either be the route of the murderer coming in or going out, and he's leaning up against railings. He's got his foot against the wall. He's rubbing valuable evidence away and again introducing evidence to that scene.
The catalogue of errors goes on. According to Henry Lee, blood that had quite clearly dripped onto Nicole's back could very well have been the killer's. It was never even collected.
This on her back, those passive dripping, clearly indicate could be another individual's blood. Could be Ron Goldman's, could be the suspects. That's why it's so crucial for solving case to reconstruct the case. That 7 drops of blood should collect. However, the moment you turn the body around, that 7 drops is gone. The moment you put the body in the body bag, that 7 drops were lost forever.
Peter Harper and colleague Terry Merston found yet more violations of procedure.
Ideally, you should have separate teams for each incident, and none of those teams should come into contact with one another, so that if you have a potential murder scene at Rockingham, it must be kept completely separate from Bundy Drive, and equally so the vehicle that was involved. That should also be treated as a separate scene, and it clearly hasn't been done, so you've cross-contaminated all 3 scenes.
There are also major concerns about the blood evidence in the Bronco being contaminated. Incredibly, a number of officers who had been at the Bundy crime scene were reported to have been inside the Bronco before it had been examined. And one of those officers had looked after Nicole's dog, whose blood-stained paws had originally led people to the victims.
The fact that he got into the vehicle, it's been proved that he visited the scene, he's contaminated that vehicle. Therefore, all that evidence, it isn't evidence. It's corrupt evidence. There is no validity to that evidence. If you went to the Crown Prosecution Services with that type of evidence, it wouldn't see the light of day. It certainly wouldn't go to court, and it certainly wouldn't see a prosecution.
Remarkably, just 36 hours after the murders, the Bundy Drive crime scene was washed down. But was this a case of bad police practice? Or was the evidence actively tampered with, or even planted, to help their case against Simpson? There were 2 pieces of crucial and damning evidence against him. Nicole's blood was found spattered on a pair of Simpson's socks in his bedroom, and blood was found on the back gate at Nicole's house 3 weeks after the scene had been washed down, which provided the best match by far to Simpson's DNA at the murder scene. But during the criminal trial, the defense requested that second tests be done on the blood from the socks and the gate. This time they both revealed traces of a preservative called EDTA. EDTA is used by forensic scientists to stop blood clotting in the test tube. It cannot occur naturally in blood. The sock test showed that EDTA was found only in the bloodstains and not in the rest of the socks, and the gate test had the same results. EDTA was found only in the bloodstains and not in the control samples taken from the gate. For Terry Merston and Peter Harper, there is only one interpretation.
There cannot be any other explanation with EDTA in the blood, that it's been put there. Because it doesn't occur naturally. It just specifically in the spots of blood and not on the socks. Say for argument's sake that you could get EDTA in soap powder or something like that. Well, if that was possible, then that would explain the EDTA in the blood, because it was in the socks. But when the socks haven't got EDTA or any sign of it, but the blood has, it speaks for itself. Someone must have put it there.
The blood evidence in Simpson's Bronco was also crucial to the case against him.